Item number 19. Mr. Barker.
Mr. President, item number 19, property acquisition at S2598 College Heights Airport Commerce Park. Recommendation that the City Council authorize the purchase of S2598 parcel ID number 14-1S-29-2000-017-002 along with a 5% contingency for a total appropriation of $177,900.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much. I did a little research on the owner of this property, and come to find out this appears to be a paid consultant of ours. I'd like to get someone from the staff could maybe give us some answers to some questions if that is factual. When this property was bought, I understand from Monday's meeting it was a foreclosed piece of property. When this property was bought, what was paid for this property. If this in fact was a consultant of the city, because I believe we have a code of ethics here. If you're a consultant to the city, that you can't use information that you might have gained from being that consultant to gain a profit. So this is a very, very serious issue to me, and I'd like to get some answers. If that is factual, is that a fact that this was a paid consultant? What he paid for it when he bought this piece of property. Another concern of mine, being a steward of the taxpayers' dollars, is we've got relocation fees here of $33,000 for a rental piece of property. I don't know of many rental piece of properties that it cost a tenant to move for $33,000, but I almost find that offensive to be that they brought it before us today. So I'd like to get some more history of this, and if I could, Mr. President, if I could very respectfully ask for some staff to come forward with answers to all these questions. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Barker?
Yes, sir. I have the airport staff here, Mr. Dan Flynn. We will start with him, and then we also have Ms. Marsha Hayes, if you need details of the program, and we also have Andrea Kovech, that is their finance individual out at the airport, and he'll proceed answering the questions.
Okay. Council President, Councilman Johnson, obviously when we go into any acquisition process, our utmost concern is to make sure that everything is done appropriately. I'll have Ms. Kovech talk about the history of Mr. Gunther and his work for the airport, so I'll let her talk about that, and then we can have our relocation specialist come up and talk about the amount of offering for the relocation assistance.
Good evening, council members. To talk to the purchase of the property, this property was in foreclosure initially. The airport did do an appraisal on it. Our process does take some time, and before we could finalize that project, Mr. Gunther did purchase that property on the 18th of June of 2013 for $55,400. What we're proposing tonight is that a base price of $134,000 be paid for this property based on a current appraisal. He does have tenants in there. That relocation fee of the $32,300 includes our consultant fees. Our consultant, Marsha Hayes, works with the tenants, finds the replacement housing. The actual amount that is paid to the tenant of the home is about $17,000.
If I could, Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead.
$17,000. Now, how long has this tenant lived in this home? I mean, $17,000 for someone that's renting a house to have them relocated?
Yes, sir.
Seems entirely unreasonable to me.
We have to put them in the same home or the same circumstance. They're living in a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home in a residential neighborhood. We have to find that within the city limits, similar size, similar bedrooms. If we can't find it for the price that they're paying in rent now, we do have to pay them a supplement to get them into that new housing at the appropriate price. As far as when the tenant moved in, I believe Ms. Hayes has the lease. When Mr. Gunther did buy the property in June, he did renovate it. It was initially a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and he turned it into a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and then rented the property.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for that. How long has the tenant lived in this house? I see Mr. Johnson out there, and I know he's an investigative reporter. I'm hoping that he'll bite off on this one. I know that he's works for the News Journal, and I know their investigative reporting will maybe look into this issue, because I have concerns about this. When did this tenant move into this house that was purchased by the owner June 18th, 2013? So a year and a half ago. This person, was he a consultant at that time also for the airport?
We had a previous contract with him that came before council to be a certified real estate professional to market out some of the other properties in Air Commerce Park. That was back in May of 2010. The tenants moved in September of 2013.
I apologize, but this just doesn't meet the smell test. I don't know. Again, I'm looking at Mr. Johnson out there. I know that he does so much investigative reporting for the Pensacola News Journal. I'm hoping he bites off on this one, but I just can't support this tonight. I really, really can't. And I would hope that we would have someone at the airport that would be proactive when we have foreclosures that could be on the horizon, that they take a look at this, being conscious that, these are taxpayers' dollars that are being spent. And for someone that bought something a year and a half ago for $55,400, for then in turn to us to have to purchase for $177,000, and that person was a consultant who actually was watching all this going on, that we were paying taxpayer dollars to consult us on acquisitions in that area. I really, really find it offensive. And I will not be supporting this tonight. And I'd like to hear from my other council members. I know I have an inactive real estate license. I know we have 2 realtors on the council. I'd like to hear from my other council members about this particular issue, and then I would like my second chance to speak. Thank you.
Ms. Candlewick?
Yes, I just have a question. When did the owner of the property stop being a consultant for the airport?
His last payment for brokering the property over in the Air Commerce Park was paid May 9th of 2011.
The other part is that the price differential, once there were tenants in there, is there some type of federal statute or something that said that you have to pay? I mean, these are renters. If I had a duplex and I got ready to sell my duplex, and I had tenants, and I would give them a 30-day, 60-day notice, and I say, you need to move out, and you need to go, I'm going to sell the property. I don't have to give them anything. I don't have to pay for relocation. I don't have to do anything. Why do we have to do that for this?
This is federal law, and I can have our relocation specialist speak to it.
This, as Andrea said, this is federal law that mandates this. And you as a governmental entity is not like the average landlord. You can't evict someone. We're not asking them. I mean, it's not a willing buyer, willing seller situation. And the tenants are there, and we're coming and displacing them. So they're entitled under federal programs to receive the rent supplement. Now, in order to get this, they only have to be in the home for 90 days. And that they have well met that. And the comparable that they're in is actually a 4-bedroom, 3-bath is what they're in right now. And I have to find comparables that they can move into, which is considered decent, safe, and sanitary. And the 3 comparables, the comparable that they're in right now, or the home that they're in right now, rent plus utilities is $1,612 per month. The comparables that I located, the number 1 comp that I chose was $2,025 per month, and that gave the rent differential of $413 a month. The federal program pays that for 42 months, so that gives the total balance of $17,346. Now, they're entitled to up to that amount. Relocation is a spend it to get it program. If they do not rent a home that is rent plus utilities of at least $2,025, they do not get that amount. It's reduced by what they actually rent.
One more question.
Go ahead.
Okay. When the owner of this property was a consultant for the airport, were they aware that this piece of property and other properties was something that the airport was going to look at purchase as a part of their Commerce Park?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilman Barrett?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think everyone knows that the airport's acquiring property over there. I mean, it's on the website. If you ever watch a council meeting, you've seen us purchase properties. So I don't think it's a secret that the airport is acquiring properties over there. Can you tell me what the duties that Mr. Gunther had while he was there, what his specific job function was when he was on contract, please?
His contract was for certified real estate, as a certified real estate professional. He was marketing the property in Air Commerce Park, Executive Drive and Douglas Avenue. I believe there were 6 properties that he was charged with leasing for.
It was commercial properties, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Spencer?
Thank you. Obviously, this has turned into more of an inquiry because there's a lot of information that we are trying to get to come to the surface. And I was just trying to do a quick calculation. Obviously, if Mr. Gunther picked this up for $55,000 and he was getting $1,600 a month, what was that figure, rent? What were the tenants paying?
The rent amount is $1,250 per month, plus I calculate in the average utilities for that property.
Gotcha, okay. You know, you mentioned that that he created what was from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom home. So I would think that there's a track record that would be with the city building department, that the proper construction permit was pulled, and then that permit would indicate how was the house altered. In order to get a building permit, there's a permit fee, and that permit fee is based either on additional square footage or enhancements. So there'll be some sort of track record. There should be, unless a permit wasn't properly pulled. But I think that tonight we don't have enough information.
Councilman Wingate?
Well, it looks to me like he purchased the property, he did repairs, he added to the place to bring the value up, and we have appraisals here that have been done by several approaches, the same type of appraisals that we've had on the other properties that we've been voting on and approving for the last number of council meetings. So as far as the value of the property, there shouldn't be a problem with that. As far as the ethical side of it, I don't really see where that may be a problem for him too, because there's common knowledge that those properties were over there. Somebody else could have bought the property and improved it to the same state, bring it up to the same value, and we would have still bought it.
Councilwoman Myers?
Now, I'm having a problem seeing the ethical issue here, or the conflict. I mean, he was last a consultant in 2011, then in 2013 he buys this piece of property. And unless somebody can state specifically what the ethical or conflict issue is, I'm not seeing it. I mean, we've had it appraised. It seems to be in line with other appraisals we've had over there. So I just, at this point, I just don't see what the ethical or conflict of interest issue is, because it seems like the purchase of it was sometime removed from the last time he was a consultant. The fact that he was a consultant for us doesn't mean that a person would be precluded from ever buying a piece of property that everybody knows or should know is probably going to be bought by the airport at some time. So I don't know. I don't see it. I'm going to support it unless I maybe we have an investigative reporter, maybe I'll regret what I'm supporting tonight, but I don't believe I will.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much. And if you would indulge me, I'm going to ask maybe Mr. Wells on our code of ethics. If this is appropriate, I know we have a code of ethics here in the city of Pensacola, and for a consultant to make a profit off a very property that they were in the area that they were consulting the city and the taxpayers. I would like to ask maybe Mr. Wells if he would comment on the code of ethics. If this is maybe appropriate would be a code of an investigation into this, because it just doesn't meet the smell test to me. A piece of property that was bought a year and a half ago by a person that was a consultant to this city and bought for $55,000 and change at an auction, and then a year and a half later sell it to the city of Pensacola for $177,000. I'm sorry, it doesn't meet the smell test to me. I would like to, if I could, throw Mr. Wells this question, and then I don't want to give up my right to speak, but if I could ask him this question, if this seems to me it borderlines on a question of code of ethics, if I could, Mr. President, indulge.
Yes.
Thanks. Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mr. President. The 2010 charter required the City Council to adopt a code of ethics as part of the new charter. The City Council did adopt a code of ethics. It's in the Code of Ordinances. One of the elements of it, Mr. Johnson is apparently recalling, does speak to employees of the city, officers and elected officials and appointed officials, and it talks about consultants and I believe contractors as well, that all of those folks cannot use any confidential information or information that would uniquely come to you as a city agent or employee or elected official for financial gain. And so, as I understand the facts on the record at this point, Mr. Gunther was retained as a city consultant or contractor or real estate agent, and I believe that was in 2010. He did receive compensation for a year or so doing what the contract called for him to do. And then once that relationship had ended, then he started purchasing properties in the airport commerce park and flipping them to the city. This is, I think, his second or third one. The key to whether that section applies is whether he received any confidential or information that's not available to the public at large when he became our Commerce Park real estate agent. It's my understanding from conversations with these folks that their predecessor, Malinda Crawford, the airport director at the time, provided Mr. Gunther and perhaps one or two other agents who were interested in being this airport's real estate agent with an in-depth briefing and overview of what the city's plan was for the Commerce Park, the approach to acquiring properties. Perhaps I wasn't there. I can't tell you what she did, but it would have involved as well the financing opportunities and formulas that the FAA uses to compensate for the properties that are acquired through that program. One of the issues, I asked for some clarification just because you've asked for the information, and that is I've seen some information from the airport about the rents that were paid to Mr. Gunther by the tenants that he has, and I'm not sure. I thought I'd seen different figures that the lease was $1,250, but he actually received far less than that for several months.
He would give them
Would you?
From what I understand, from Mr. Gunther, he gave them on 2 occasions a month free. One when they signed the initial contract, and the next when he upped the rent after a year being there. And it's my understanding that rent-free, they elected, instead of taking an entire month rent-free, that they spaced that out over time so it would lessen the burden on them of the increase of the rent and actually paying the rent.
Mr. President, so I haven't relinquished the floor yet, and I appreciate your indulgence of this, but so this is a history or pattern of this particular property owner, that this is the second or third time that he has actually flipped property after being our consultant. I know that there was an issue with this particular person with the CMPA when we had the Beck Properties just across the street, where we had an offer on the table and he's sitting on the CMPA. All of a sudden, very quickly brought a second offer. So I believe there's a pattern or history here, and I'm looking at Mr. Johnson. I'm hoping that he's writing all this down. But it appears to be a pattern here of a person that kind of inside baseball, if you will. And it's just very concerning to me, and I would encourage my council members to not vote for this tonight. We're talking about a relocation fee of someone that's lived in a house less, I'm not sure when that is, but $17,000 to the owner, $33,000. A profit from $55,400 a year and a half later. I think the purchase price here is $177,900 for someone that was a paid consultant. This is very concerning to me. Very, very concerning. I just can't even believe that the watchdog would support, the watchdog of the council would support this. I hear her mention herself as the watchdog, and to see her supporting this is just concerning to me also. So I will not be supporting this. I think that this is just totally unreasonable. Again, this is insider trading. I believe that we have a person here that from his history on the CMPA, bringing a deal after the Beck family had brought something to the CMPA for a piece of property there, an out parcel. We see construction going on there. For this to be a pattern of 2 or 3 times that this flip has happened after he was a paid consultant in this city, I just cannot be supporting this, and I can't believe that the watchdog is supporting this. Thank you.
Councilwoman Myers?
Yes, well, I want to thank Mr. Johnson for joining me as the council watchdog. I guess he's referring to me. And I want to thank you for bringing this issue up, and I will not be supporting it. And this is why. It concerns me that this is the third house that we have purchased from Mr. Gunther. Is this the third one? The second. So I would want more information about the first house. When did that occur? How much did he pay for that? And so I do want to look into this. I still do not know what the if there is a ethics violation here, but I think that there's been enough question raised about it that I think this item should be pulled from the agenda until further we have all of the facts regarding this issue, and I would like to look at the other property.
Ms.
How much that cost when it was bought, and because you would have to assume that, anybody who watches these meetings pretty much should know how much we're paying for property over there. So one could have an expectation that they would probably get a pretty good return on their investment if they bought property over there. But it does concern me, and so I won't be supporting it tonight. Doesn't mean that I won't support it later on, but I just don't have I keep hearing more and more added to this, and the more I hear, the more it does concern me. And I just want to thank Mr. Johnson for bringing this to the attention of council and being aggressive in his questioning on this issue. Thank you.
Council President, if I may, just want to remind, we've been in the process of acquiring this property in this area for well over 10 years. There have been a multitude of public meetings. So as one of the council members pointed out, it's well known that the airport is purchasing this property. If it amounts to insider information, again, everybody knows that we've been purchasing this property for quite some time, and it's probably going to be another couple of years before we're complete with this. The process that we followed for this particular acquisition is exactly the same that we have followed for every other process. We will go out, we will get an independent appraisal. We don't look at who owns the property, we look at the property itself. We can't control who the owner is. We can only control the process that we follow. The process that we follow is the process that's outlined within the federal and state guidelines. As far as the relocation parameters, again, there's nothing secret about that. That information is out there for anybody to get. The amount of money that tenants might be eligible for from a relocation standpoint, the amount of money that residents might be available to obtain. So again, this process is exactly the same that we followed. We did, Mr. Gunther, the other parcel of property he purchased back in 2010 for $49,000. I don't know how much we spent for that. That was sold for $117,000 in 2012. But again, we cannot control who.
Yes, Councilman Spencer.
Okay. I want to thank fellow council member Myers for reversing her earlier stance. I'm just hearing our airport director share with us that the previous purchase was 2010.
Sir, he purchased that property in 2010 for $49,000. We purchased it in 2012 then for $117,000.
Okay, for $117,000. And when was he first engaged?
And that was also in foreclosure at that time.
Right. And when was he first engaged with us?
We brought the initial item March 22nd of 2010 to the committee meeting, and his contract was executed June 1st of 2010.
Okay, so the same year.
Yes, sir.
The same year.
Almost a month later.
A month after.
10 days after he purchased 2502, 2504 Douglas, his contract was executed. But it went to committee in March of 2010.
When did a consultant like that begin to have discussions with city staff or airport personnel, maybe Malinda then?
Yes, sir. It would have been Malinda at that point in time.
And
sir.
We've got an execution of a contract with him as a certain date, but I'm sure there were discussions with her prior to that.
That, sir, I cannot
As
speak to.
As she began to vet someone that would be engaged as a consultant with our city, we don't typically just call someone up and say, congratulations, come on in and sign some documents. That takes a procurement process. So the date of the sale of his, or the purchase of the property from him,
it looks like, sir, that
precariously close.
Yeah, Malinda would have started talking to them back in 2009.
Would have been talking with him in 2009.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And finally, you just told us that this overall property acquisition effort is going to take several years.
Correct.
So there's nothing imminent tonight about getting this property.
No, sir.
I think you've answered it. I absolutely do not support this. There's no rush, and we continue to uncover more unsettling facts.
Thank you. Councilman Wu?
It's never easy, is it? I'm trying to sort through here and figure out where I'm at on this. I think part of it, I'm one wide and buy a piece of property and sell it. I'm vacillating between 2 points or two sides. On one side, did a person get information that no one else had, and as a result make a profit on that? That versus the fact that our objective is to acquire the property, all the property, and as I understand it, the property is being acquired through funds that come to us through the FAA. One thing that will help me a little bit in my thinking was I heard that the violation of ethics comes if the person has confidential information that other people do not. What the airport is willing to pay, is that generally known to the public? Would be my first question.
Each parcel is taken on an individual basis, sir, but obviously people can see what we have purchased parcels for in the past.
And this is basically open public knowledge?
Yes, sir.
The second question, and help me out here, there's evidently somebody that sold a house for $49,000. Foreclosure. Okay. And with the second house foreclosure as well?
Yes, sir.
So there wasn't somebody that said that I could sell it for more, but I'm going to give it to this person?
Correct.
Okay, then that helps me. I understand where my council colleague is coming from. But at this stage, I'm supporting it because we're going to buy it eventually from somebody, or else have a piece of land where a commerce park exists with one piece of land in the middle that's not part of it. I don't know, I'm necessarily happy how we got to where we are. I think we probably need to look in and have the staff realize the problems that we're having, and I think y'all are hearing what we're saying. But as I look at it, even though I'm not 100% happy with it, I don't know if Mr. Gunther got confidential information and then profited as a result of it. So at this stage, unless I hear something different, I'm leaning towards supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I'm sorry.
No problem. Ms. Myers?
Yes. The issue is not how much we're paying the tenant, at least not for me, or the appraisal. I think the issue is the relationship of Mr. Gunther being a consultant to the airport, and whether or not that raises any ethical considerations.
Again, ma'am, he's not currently a consultant.
I know that, but he has bought another piece of property in the past at a time in close proximity to when he became a consultant. However, I feel that anybody has the right to buy property over there, and if they make a profit on it, that's perfectly legal. So the issue is not that somebody bought a piece of property and is making a profit on it, apparently. The issue that's been raised is his relationship as a consultant with the airport, and whether that poses any type of ethical problem in terms of, did he have inside information? Personally, I feel that he didn't, because, I mean, I'm always astounded at how much we're paying for property over there. Every time I see one of these, I mean, I think, wow, that's a lot to pay for a piece of property in that neighborhood. So I see Mr. Gunther is here, and we still haven't gotten an opinion, though, from the city attorney. Hasn't weighed in on this, and so I'd like for the city attorney to weigh in on it tonight, too.
Mr. Attorney?
I was just on the edge of my seat waiting for someone to ask.
That's why I asked you.
Well, since Mr. Wells and I have already had a semi-duel, I'll keep this brief. I think Councilman Baer correctly identified the issue that I think is the core of the problem, and I think the statute or the ordinance reads confidential information. And so now the issue is, how in the world do you ever determine if it was confidential information? Because there's no, other than the Florida Commission on Ethics, there's no apparatus I know of to investigate this matter. So we're essentially speculating on Mr. Gunther's knowledge without having any fact. And I guess to put it in perspective, we've gone through this a couple times over the last 4 years that I've been here, and I've always said that I would counsel not making any effort to resolve ethical issues unless you have a sworn affidavit in front of you from someone willing to come in and say, these are the facts and I swear they're true. The second issue I think was raised by Councilman Wu is you're going to have to wrestle with the fact that if in fact the airport needs this property to expand, you're going to have to buy it sooner or later or take some sort of legal action against it. And, I'm speculating now. I can't imagine that the present owner is going to sell it to anyone else but the airport, because I doubt that there's a market for it. So I think you have two issues to resolve, and both of them are very difficult. And quite frankly, I don't know how you do it. I will say, and I'll defer to the interim city administrator and Mr. Wells, who may have more information than I have. My office has no information at this point that there was any ethical issue involved. Now, I'm not saying there was or wasn't. All I'm saying is that I don't have a fact that would lead me to that conclusion. Although I certainly understand Councilman Johnson's position. On the face of it, it does appear that maybe we could have dotted the I's and crossed the T's a little better. But if the issue is it was it ethical or unethical or legal or illegal, there's just no fact right now in front of you to figure that out. And I don't know how to get to it.
Councilman Baer?
Thank you, Mr. President. I've turned my light on and off several times. This is a difficult one for me, too. I want to thank our staff for doing your jobs, because I know dealing with the federal government, having been an employee, there are certain things that you have to do. I mean, like, for instance, what you've already said, the relocation fee, that's prescribed. I mean, is it 75% is paid by federal government of the total, of this total?
These funds are through Florida Department of Transportation.
Okay. But the rules are prescribed by the federal government, is that correct?
In this situation, we're following federal and state parameters for the acquisition.
Gotcha. And in order to get the funds from FDOT, or from, I guess in this case FDOT, we have to follow their rules, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In this case, Mr. Gunther was, and it's unfortunate that it's become a case of Mr. Gunther, but he purchased this property. He was not a consultant at the time. Even when he was a consultant, he was leasing commercial property for the airport in the Commerce Park. Isn't that correct? We've already established that?
Yes, sir.
He was not acquiring properties, residential properties?
For the airport, no, sir.
No, he was not doing that. There is very little that the federal government does related to issues such as this that I think would be confidential. I think there are confidential things the federal government does. As far as the purchase of property like this, it seems like we get an enormous amount of detail. In fact, I remember back when I think Councilman Johnson asked to have more detail on the appraisals and everything, and I think you have done what you have to do. The problem to me is, if we don't purchase this property, then do we just wait for Mr. Gunther to sell it, to die? I mean, at what point did we acquire this property? We need this property, and I don't think that there is a clear, as Mr. Messer said, there is a clear ethical violation of someone who was a consultant at the time, who had confidential information, which I'm not even sure what that confidential information would be, because all of this is prescribed by law, how you go about this, how you determine the relocation fee. I don't see a clear way that we can deny this other than just a gut feeling. And I don't want to get sued over this. I think that Mr. Gunther could have grounds to perhaps challenge us on this decision if we do it just based on some gut feeling. And I'm going to support it tonight, and I hope we do hear from Mr. Gunther, because I think maybe he can give us more details on his relationship with the airport.
Ms. Cameron?
I have no comments.
No. Mr. Wingate?
Well, if you've been doing this for 10 years, public information got out there in 2004. So the people in the community have been knowing about us purchasing the airport property all the way back to 2004. So it wasn't confidential. It's been public knowledge, for a long time. So I can't see that it's something that somebody knew about, and used it to their advantage.
Councilman Spencer?
Thanks. May I ask staff some questions, Mr. President?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, on the relocation fee, again, that funding comes from?
It's all through FDOT, sir.
Okay, which is a government, certainly a citizen taxpayer-funded agency.
That is correct. And DOT follows the federal uniform guidelines, and
Okay.
that is what they require
All
the
right.
city of Pensacola to do as well.
I want to deviate for just a second and remind everyone, our fellow council members and citizens, that our job tonight or in any time we are governing is not just to watch out for the tax dollars of the city of Pensacola. Every tax dollar comes from, perhaps it is upstream, but guess what? It's still us, the taxpayers. That's not free money. So one of my questions is just now, I'm just going to break it down to pure math, and maybe Mr. Gunther's going to be responding to some of this, but if, let's just say Mr. Gunther right now purchased it for $55,000, I'm not putting in what the additional enhancement cost, and I understand that's a county property, so we can track that through his county building permit to see what that was. But just at, say, $55,000, say he paid say he went back and financed a $55,000 loan, paid 20% down. I did some quick calculations. He'd have a loan payment of around $668 a month, and his rent right now is $1,250, right? So that's a $583 a month profit. So if the property didn't sell, if we didn't buy it from Mr. Gunther for 3 years, he makes an additional $21,000 in profit just based on the loan payment to rent revenue differential. And again, I'm hearing now I want to talk about the relocation fee. If this tenant had what sort of notice, how could we protect taxpayers from having to pay an additional $33,000?
Well, actually, the tenant is not noticed on these properties until we reach an agreement with the property owner. And that differs a little bit from the DOT standards and the uniform standards because it is a voluntary program. And we notify the tenants after we reach the agreement, and then I go through and I do a household survey. I make sure that everything that they tell me is accurate. I do a walkthrough of the home.
But are the tenants aware tonight?
They are aware tonight, yes.
Yeah, okay. So if they had further advance notice, like 3 years.
It wouldn't make any difference.
Okay.
All they are required to do is have 90 days. Be occupying the property for 90 days prior to the offer being made.
again, how long do you expect our property acquisition process to take?
Looking at the parcels that we still have to acquire and the funding sources and when the funds are going to come in, it's going to be a couple of years before we have everything purchased.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Gunther to come up in a second. I haven't spoken on this issue yet. And it's funny we're talking about insider information because I have some insider information on the process that it went through because I competed against Mr. Gunther in the RFP to try and lease the commercial property, and I'm going to support this tonight because I know there wasn't any information in those conversations that would have helped me or helped him acquire information that he should buy property in there. It seems like he made a pretty good business decision. So no more speakers. Mr. Gunther?
Mr. President, members of council. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a little background. Basically the airport acquisition program, as Councilman Wingate mentioned, has been on the airport website for years. I mean, the intent is to eventually purchase all those properties all the way over to Langley. And the way that I got involved was, at least prior to Ms. Hayes getting involved, that kind of thing. In my opinion, the whole acquisition program wasn't being handled very well. There was a lot of vacancy of the commercial property that the city had already acquired over there, and it caught the eye of some people, and so that's the reason the RFP was issued, to basically lease out some of those properties and bring in some income rather than just having them sit vacant. And that's why I was brought on board. I didn't make any recommendations as to what would be acquired or anything remotely like that. Basically, I was hired to lease out commercial buildings, which I did for 1 year. The first property that I purchased, I had under contract probably 45 days before I even entered into a contract with the city, and closed, I think a couple weeks before, before I was hired. And I disclosed at the time that I just purchased a property to Malinda Crawford at the time, and she said, look, you're handling leasing. You're not advising us as to, what we would buy or not buy. So anyway, there was no special knowledge acquired of any way. I do report, occasionally and let them know what I had leased or had not, and then my contract ended. An opportunity came up to purchase a property at a foreclosure sale. I purchased it, and you can ask Ms. Hayes. We've been negotiating for quite a while. Honestly, it doesn't really matter to me whether I sell it. I'm making $1,200 a month on it in rent. So but they need it. The tenants would like to go ahead and move. The city owns literally everything around it. There's no sense for me to hold out for more money if I can take advantage of an opportunity and sell it now. So that's why I came down. I was watching, and then there was conflict. There was some confusion as to actually what happened. So like I said, no special information. The only information out there is we're eventually going to buy all that property over to Langley, and everybody knows the city's website, the airport's website states that today, as it did, for the past 10 years. So, anyway, thank you.
Mr. Gunther, hang on 1 second. We might have some questions. Ms. Myers?
Well, I don't have a question, but, I look at it this way. I think that Mr. Gunther, like any other citizen, has the constitutional right to contract with the city. And unless there is an apparent ethics violation, I'm concerned that if we interfere with a lawful transaction here, he could have a cause of action against us for interfering with the right to contract. I think that I'm going to go ahead and support it if there is proof or someone has information that would suggest that there is an ethics violation here. you can go ahead and file an ethics violation against Mr. Gunther. So I don't see that precluding us at this point from going ahead with this transaction, because I just don't see the ethics violation at this point. And we've gotten advice from our city attorney and also our assistant city attorney, and so if anyone has information that an ethics violation has been committed here, you can file a complaint. And Mr. Gunther will have to suffer the consequences of it.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. And Mr. Gunther just said that it doesn't really matter to him. So I think there's approximately, if I could, Mr. President, I think there's about 30 properties yet to be purchased in that Commerce Park.
Yes, sir. There's about 3 additional properties.
33 additional. We've been purchasing about 3 a year.
3 to 5.
So I don't understand Mr. Flynn's saying that in 2 years we will have all 33 pieces purchased.
We received an additional FDOT supplemental grant. We have approximately $1.2 million to spend on that. We're also getting another $1 million in July from the initial grant.
Well, let's say 2.2 million divided by 177,000. I don't know what that comes out to, and I'd have to get my calculator out. But it appears that Mr. Gunther doesn't have really a lawsuit, and it's interesting that Ms. Myers is flip-flop now on us. But he did state that it doesn't really matter to him, so I don't think that he has a lawsuit against this city council when he just publicly stated that it doesn't really matter to him. So I would say that let's put him at the end of the line of the 33 property owners, since it doesn't matter to him. He publicly stated that, and let's if this is 2 years or 5 years, he will be able to enjoy the $1,250 a month rent, and let him just go to the end of the line and let some of these other people. The other thing that concerns me is we've had at least 2 pieces of foreclosed property, people that probably have suffered, going through the foreclosure process, and that our staff isn't proactive enough to go out and find these folks that they're suffering through foreclosure. That we don't have a staff that goes and says, Mr. Whoever, we understand you're in foreclosure and that we are going to acquire your pieces of property. Instead, we allow a paid consultant to come in and to purchase that property in foreclosure, and these people suffer, and that concerns me also. But it appears to me that Mr. Gunther doesn't care. He says it doesn't matter to him. So I say let's pull this thing from the agenda. Let's put him at the end of the line, and we will purchase his property down the road. And there's also eminent domain relief that can happen to these property owners out there. So I have concerns about people that are in foreclosure. I'll speak for them that suffer, worrying about that. And we have somebody that was a paid consultant in the city of Pensacola go in and buy this foreclosed piece of property now, flipping it for, they bought it for $55,000, flipping it for $177,000 a year and a half later. And he doesn't really care. So let's just put him at the end of the line. Thank you.
Councilman Bear?
2 questions, Mr. President. Thank you. One for Mr. Gunther and one for staff. Mr. Gunther, do you mind disclosing how much you put into the property after you purchased it?
Yeah, around $20,000. And just to correct a mischaracterization, it was all cosmetic work. There was no conversion of a bedroom. I don't know where that information came from or whatever. It was always a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home. It was paint, carpet, lighting fixtures, that kind of thing, and landscaping, that type of stuff. There was also roofing repairs to the garage, and some appliances. And then the other thing I would correct is, the purchase price $134. I mean, the amount that goes to the consultant and the tenant and that kind of thing doesn't have anything to do with me at all. So.
Thank you, Mr. Gunther. And to staff, how much have we invested in this property at this point to get it to where we are making an offer on it?
We have done several appraisals on this property. When it was in foreclosure, review appraisals, Mr. Gunther's asked us to do several appraisals as well. I would say we've put at least $10,000 into it already.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Wingate?
I'd like to call a question.
Second.
Okay. And let's vote on calling the question. Any discussion on that? And give me a second to let the staff. Okay. Please vote on calling the question. All right, that passes 8-0. For no more discussion, please ask you to vote on the original recommendation. Vote on. Motion passes 6-2.